Man, early freezes can be totally devastating to a fall garden, especially after all that hard work you put in. Let's show you what we got left. It's not much. That is one of the earliest freezes I have ever experienced down here in Texas. We're in East Texas, and our first freeze came in late October. We're not supposed to get our first freeze until about December 15. So that freeze came a month and a half early, and all the hard work we put in with putting starts in, really nothing survived. We had some things survive that first frost, like the broccoli and the cabbage and the Brussels sprouts, but they're just little seedlings, so they just made it through that first one, but not the 4 subsequent freezes we've had since then. Those other freezes were absolutely insane, down in the low 20s. I think it was 24 here, maybe 23 one night, and really nothing survived. Let's show you what did. We've got carrots here, and they don't mind the cold. There's absolutely no damage to these carrots whatsoever. They're growing pretty well, but we're going to see how that freeze is affecting their growth underground, because if they're not getting enough semi-warm temps, they're not going to put down the root system or the carrot like they need to. The tops looks fine. A couple more things we got going. Just a little bit of spinach, not much, because it didn't have a chance to germinate. It got too cold too quick, and it stayed fairly cold. The temperatures haven't risen back up. Usually in the past, when we've gotten an early freeze, it'll hit that dip, but then it'll bounce right back up for the next few weeks, and it really won't affect the germination rates of things that are direct sown like spinach, but it did this year because it hasn't gotten much warmer. Behind us we've got our garlic. You can see it's a little beat up, but garlic doesn't mind the cold, so it's growing fairly well. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm not worried about the spinach that did come up, but I don't think we're going to get much because that, like I said, that germination rate, terrible. If you haven't done so already, go down below and hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you here on a permanent basis on our channel. We're doing a lot of great things here on the homestead, and we think some of this information, if not all of it, is going to be really helpful for you. So let's focus on some of the mature plants that had no problem with the freeze. Well, maybe they had a little problem, but I highlighted collard greens in the past on another video maybe a year ago, and collard greens, mature collard greens, don't mind the cold at all. They look a little wilted right now, so they did take kind of a little bit of a hit, but you can see they're still alive. There's still no problem. There's no freeze damage. They're just a little wilty. So that might indicate just a little bit of freeze damage, but not too bad. Unfortunately, the collards, which I direct seeded right next to it to get those to come up for the fall garden, for the winter and winter through, didn't get big enough, and they're completely devastated. I don't think they're gonna grow at all. Down the line you can see that actually happened with our Swiss chard and our kale as well. Everything that was larger and more mature made it through these freezes with no issue, but everything that we did plant next to it, like the small Swiss chard seedlings that we grew, and the broccoli that we put in next to that, and some more kale that we direct sowed, all done. They didn't make it. They were too tender at that small stage. So you want to hope that you never get an early freeze like we have here that's going to completely kill off all your seedlings, and you got to plan for it, because unfortunately that's what's happened this year. So pretty much no winter garden except for the things that we had maturing and tall and big and strong. They made it through that freeze, no problem. I was so excited for this bed this winter because I know what it's capable of. This is where we had our Chinese cabbage, and last year it handled a freeze at a mature stage with no problem. This year, these little seedlings, They didn't get time to grow, and they're all completely done, as well as the pak choi, which unfortunately didn't also have time to get up properly. They were getting to a good size right before we were going to start to eat them. Completely devastated as well. You can see our sweet potato patch behind us. It's completely devastated, but they are not cold hardy at all. The leaves on them are very delicate and good to eat, but they are very delicate. Although these sweet potatoes in the ground are very hardy, and they will have no problem with the cold. We are going to harvest those pretty soon, probably in the next week or so, and it's much easier to harvest those when the leaves are dead. So, hey, we lucked out on that at least. Obviously, tomatoes are completely destroyed, and that's nothing new because they're not cold hardy at all. We were just hoping to get a few fall tomatoes sneaking in there and ripening before the frost or freeze hit, and we didn't. Oh well. I was so sad that our beets did not make it through. The beets are actually themselves very hardy, but when they're so tiny and so young, that freeze came so early, they were devastated. We're not going to have any beets this year either. These snap peas almost made it. They made it through the first freeze with no problem, and they were looking like they were going to shoot up and start producing, and then we got the really deep freezes. That first freeze we got in late October was probably around 30 degrees. Unfortunately, the subsequent freezes, like I said, were in the low 20s. They didn't survive. Even the cabbage and the Brussels sprouts, which do well in the cold, these seedlings were too young. We did get them to a good height before we transplanted them in the ground, and that freeze just came way too early. They didn't have time to establish themselves. They were too young, too tender, and they didn't make it. So none of that this year. So as you can see, you can plan for a great fall garden, and the weather is just not going to cooperate, which is why you need to have your food preps, if you're out on a homestead, set and ready for any winter that the garden is not going to produce. So I know you up there in the north, you guys up there in the north, usually you have a nice greenhouse in the wintertime, and that's going to provide for you. Down here in the south, this greenhouse is a challenge because of ants. It's a joke that the entire state of Texas is one giant ant mound, and that's true. We've got some potted citrus in there right now. They have ants in them, and they're not just regular ants, they're fire ants, so they're a pain to deal with, literally. But we're going to have some carrots this year. We're going to have a few leafy greens, but not much. We're going to get it rolling. Hopefully we'll have a nice warm spring, an early spring, and we're going to get that garden rolling and producing quite quickly in that spring. As always, we want you to go over and visit us on countrylivingexperience.com, but before you do that, go down and hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the little notification bell. All three things for us. It helps out our channel and our family a lot. Thank you so much. We'll see you next Tuesday on the next video.